Welcome back to our series on Firebase integration with a SwiftUI in iOS app. In today's video, we will be focusing on integrating Firebase authentication with email and social media in SwiftUI. So this is part 2 of our series. So if you haven't watched the part 1 yet, be sure to check it out for the initial setup. And we have an exciting announcement for you, so keep watching till the end. So in this video, we will dive deep into integrating Firebase authentication into our SwiftUI app. But before we get started, I just want to remind you about the surprise giveaway we have planned at the end of this series. Make sure to follow my social handles to stay tuned for the giveaways, announcements, and additional updates. But before we begin, as usual, I'd like to ask for your support. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you not only show your appreciation, but also help the YouTube algorithm recommend our content to others who might find it valuable. In the next video, we will be exploring Firebase Firestore, a powerful NoSQL document database. We will learn how to retrieve data from Firestore and use it in our SwiftUI app. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and enable notifications so you don't miss it. Alright, so let's dive into the code here. And in our previous video, we set up a Firebase and initialized it in our SwiftUI app. Now that we want to take the next step and integrate the Firebase authentication, and we will start by importing the necessary library first. So go into your project here and scroll it down so you can go to the framework section. So now you can actually search Firebase auth. So add that, and which will be importing to your project. So now let's jump into the coding part where we will be implementing email registration, email sign-in, and a social media sign-in functionality. So first, let's start with email registration. So let's head back to the Firebase console first. Okay, so here is our Firebase console that we created last time. So in order to integrate that, head to this build section, and it will have this drop-down menu. Then there's authentication. Click on that. And then basically when you start here, basically there's nothing. So just hit the get started. All right, let's start by click on this native provider under email and password so that we can start to implementing the email authentication. That will include registration and login. So there's a few options here. In our case, we only need to enable the first one, email password, which basically allow users to sign up using their email address and password. So and our SDKs also provide email address verification, password recovery, and email address change primitives. So you can basically learn more from there, and I think we're going to use that to head over to the documentation section so that we can start to reading through some of the documentation. And also down here you have the option to enable SMS multi-factor authentication, which is pretty interesting and a good way to help you secure your users' credentials. For us, we can probably go in there. We can actually directly go to Firebase and go in there and click on this section right here, iOS. We can choose, I think it was password authentication, yes. So right here is the page that we wanted. Authenticate with Firebase using password-based accounts on Apple platforms. So before we begin, basically ask you to edit the package, which we have already done it. Now we want to, when finish Xcode automatically resolving, okay, we already did that. If you haven't yet connect your app to the Firebase Store project, you have to do so. Enable the email password sign-in, which we just did that. Next one was on the sign in method tab, enable email password. Yes, we did that as well. Now create a password-based account. So here is where we're gonna start to integrating the code to our project, to our SwiftUI project. So the first one, it says import the Firebase core module in your UI application delegate, as well as any other Firebase modules your app delegate uses. For example, use Cloud Firestore and authentication. So we will definitely integrate those stuff into our application delegate section, so we can initiating the Firebase SDK. Let's go back to our code. I believe we have already insert those things right here into it. So now we just want to make sure we call the proper function to enable it. So let's go back and take a quick look. All right, so we're back here. Now let's go to this one right here. And yes, we have already created app delegate, and we also created this did finish launching with option. And also we did call this to triggers the Firebase. So everything has already been set here. So we're good to go at this point. So let's go back to the documentation again to see what we need to do next. All right, so the next thing we need to do is when a user signs up using your app sign up form, complete any new account validation steps that your app requires, such as verifying that new account's password was correctly typed and meets your complexity requirements. Create a new account by passing the new user's email address and password to create user. So basically, this is going to be the function that we will call to create the new user's account. So in our case, I think we're just gonna programmatically adding all those things directly into it for now. Then we're gonna create a really simple UI in the SwiftUI to show you how can we integrating those features together. But I would probably not gonna have a password validation or email validation in place to double check if the email is valid or the password is the correct way of a correct form. So just for the demo purpose, I'm just gonna simply typing anything in the text field, then gonna pass that directly into here to create the account. So let's copy this first right here. Then let's go back to our Xcode. So right here we have this content view. Basically, currently it just have a really simple UI. I believe if you run this in the Canva, it's just gonna show you really simple thing, shows a globe and then hello world. So we can just run that and take a look. Yes, so this is gonna be our really simple UI. You can easily see the globe and hello world. And in order to do that, we will need to create some kind of logic and also UI to hook them up together, so they can actually so user actually can type in the credential and send information directly to the API. So let's do that. Let's start with creating our I'm just gonna start with a view model, so that way it'll be easier for us to integrate it. You can choose any way possible, whatever best practice you think you need it for your own project or application. So let's start from there. Just gonna create a not SwiftUI, Swift file. Just gonna call it a Firebase manager, and it's gonna be a simple class. Firebase manager, and we're gonna have just a really default init, but we're gonna have a function in there. We're gonna call it create user, and we want to pass a username and a password. And I believe we want to use this. So in that case, we have to import Firebase auth. So in that way, we can use this auth, create user functionalities. And also, we're just gonna do a quick check on the username and password. So we're gonna put a quick garlet. Username, else, return. We're gonna do the same thing as for the password, else, and return. And now we're gonna just simply pass that email username. Oh, actually, there want to email. So let's do email instead of username, because then you have to create a custom ones. So let's just call it email. And password is going to be password. So auth result and error, we're going to keep that as the same for now. We're just going to do a quick view to make sure everything's okay here. Okay, everything seems okay. We're going to drag this up a little bit so it can be together with all the files. So let's go back to create the UI we needed. And eventually we'll come back, continue our documentation to hook everything up. So let's go back here. Let's enable this so we can actually see the changes right here. So in order to do that, we need to actually have a text field. A text field and another text field to enter the password, one for email, one for password, and a button to say we want to sign up the user or log in the user. So let's go ahead and create that. So you want to say maybe a text. We're just gonna call it email. We're gonna give it a little font, so it can be header, headline. Give little bonus to it. Next one is a text field. We're gonna call this. This should be a placeholder. So I'm gonna give an example name and name. I actually just call it sample at sample.com. Binding is going to be a state object here. So I create a state private var for username for email. And it's going to be an optional string. So that is fine there. We're going to bind that. Wait, state cannot have optional here, I believe. So technically we want to give it an empty string. So we want to have a binding, then the email, yes. Next one, we want to have one that's almost the same. So let's do that as well. I believe we can give it a border as well. Let's give a black color. For the demonstration purpose, I'm not gonna add a style on it. I'm just gonna add a simple border so that we can actually see. Actually, I'm gonna remove the border, so we can just see the actual text. Then next one is password. I'm gonna give a simple headline. And I'm gonna just copy this text field down here. 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're gonna create another one. It's called a password. Then we're gonna be referencing that. We're gonna remove those, so we can actually create 2 buttons here. So this one is gonna be sign up. So let's use a text. I believe the button have a style that you can choose from. I think this might looks better. There you go. Another one is going to be sign in. Sign in and text. sign in. Button style, border prominent. I think that's all we need for now. And we can actually try to give a little bit width to it. Let's make sure everything is aligned to the leading. And then we want a button in the center, right? So let's do that with another VStack. We're gonna put all the buttons inside of that. And then we want to give the VStack a frame, max width infinity, so that we can push everything to the center. Next, we might want to give a little bit more padding. So let's add a 16 to it. Or maybe that's not enough. 32. Okay. So I think we're good there. Yeah, maybe I will just give the text field a little bit. I think it was the style, not style. A layer. I think it was a layer. Let's just give a simple border for now, because I want to save some time so we can continue to talk about the next implementation, which is social media, social network implementation. So let's do that. I believe we can do this. Let's see. Okay, so I was wrong. Let's just do black for now. So at least we can see where is the text field is. Probably should give a frame a height of 50. And add the border. Okay, so I think that's that'll be good for now to start with. Then we can continue implement our features. So we need to call the Firebase manager. So let's call that right here. Stay object, private var. Let's call Firebase manager. Go to Firebase manager. So now we have this. What we want to do is whenever, yes, we do need a observable, but we might not need it at this moment. But eventually, when we want to have a database and start to updating data, then we will need the observable object. So let's add that so we can use the stay object. Okay, so this should be go away in a second. Then, okay, so I'll come back here. So basically what we want to do is whenever we tap on the sign up button, we want to be able to sign up. And so let's do that by creating a function. Let's call sign up user. And in order to do that, I believe we have to call a task. So we can actually call Firebase manager and create user. Create user. We're just gonna be passing the email, and this one is gonna pass in the password. So then we can actually add the sign up right here. So whenever we tap on the button, we should be able to sign up a user, and we will do some debugging print so you can see we are actually successfully signed a user up. So let's go back to make some small changes here. So one thing is we want to check is empty, but since we know that this content view here, the email and the password by default gonna have an empty string, so they're never gonna be a null. So let's go back to make some adjustment here. So instead of give them pass an optional in, we want to just do a guardlet email.isEmpty. It's not, if it's not empty, then same as the password is empty, and we don't want to be empty. So if it's empty, it will be returned. If it's empty here, also be returned. Otherwise, we can continue to do our thing. Okay, so now let's go back to the Firebase documentation. Let's take a quick look and see what we need to do next. Okay, now we're back to here. Scroll down and let's see. Here basically says if the new account was successfully created, the user is signed in, and you can get the user's account data from the result object that's passed to the callback method. So we can actually do a print to print out the user ID so that we know that user has been created. And afterwards, we can go to the Firebase console and to confirm if the user has been created. So let's go back to Xcode again to finish up that. So here, if we're successfully signed the user in, but before we do that, let's do a quick if-let check. If-let error. So basically, if there's an error, I want you to just simply handle it. But for the demo purpose, we're just gonna print this error out. And otherwise, we want to see the auth result. Just gonna do if else if let auth result, so we can check if that's a null. Otherwise, I think you should better handle that as well. But for this case, I'm just gonna give it a comment. I'm just gonna say unknown error. In this case, it could be possibly returning a null for error and possibly return a null at the same time for auth result, which we don't know exactly how the Firebase handles. So we're just gonna put this potential else. So we're just gonna put this potential else case statement right here so that we know eventually need to handle that. But for now, let's focus on this one. So if we have the auth result, we want to print in the auth result dot, I believe it says user, yes, dot ID or user. There was supposed to be a display name is anonymous. UID, yes. So we're gonna print out the user ID so that way we know that has been successfully logged in. And also we're gonna give it an additional saying sign up successfully. Here is your ID. Okay. So that way we know we have this ID right here. So let's go back to content view. Okay, now let's try to run this SwiftUI code so that we can actually create our user. I don't really want to use the Canva because sometimes Canva actually have some issue, and I'm not sure if a Canva will actually run the Firebase SDK part of the code there. So let's just try to save some time, just directly run this thing through simulator. Okay, so we have everything there. And we can start to adding our user. And I'm gonna use password exclamation point. Okay, so normally you want to use something called like a secure field. So basically that will actually hides the user's input into a star, so that way the user's password can be hidden. But this for the demonstration purpose, I'm just gonna use the normal text field so that you can actually see all the things. So, all right, let's sign user up. And as you can see, sign up successfully. Here is your ID, and this is the user ID. So we can go to the Firebase console and take a look to see if the user has already been created. All right, welcome back to the Firebase console here. So so far you don't see anything because we haven't refreshed the screen to get the new data yet. So let's refresh real quick. And now you can see the user has been created with the email and also the date created, sign in, and also the same user ID that exists that we print out. So great, now that we have email registration set up, so let's move onto the email sign-in part. So let's go back to our documentation on the sign-in user. Okay, so signing the user is pretty much almost the same as creating a new user. Everything else you have to import and initializing Firebase SDK, and then the only thing different is the calling the method. So copy this code here, and then we can actually go back to finish the implementation for the Firebase authentication signing. Okay, so let's go to Firebase Manager. We want to create another new function. It's called a Firebase function sign in user, and we want to use similar stuff. Email as a string and password as a string, and we want to call this auth, and then we want to copy the same thing for the check to make sure we got user's email and password. Next, we just pass them in, and we do have a weak self by default adding there. We'll just keep that, and auth 0, and also a check for the weak self. We can use that, there's no problem there. And then we're gonna copy this. Let's make sure everything is indented correctly. Okay, technically, if you have something you need to caching, you need to hold on to in this instance here, then of course you want to use a strong self. But in our case, so far, right now, we just want to print out whatever we got. So in order to check if you are signing correctly, you can actually, let's change this, signing successfully, and here's your ID, so then we would know we are signing successfully. So we can actually call this code on our SwiftUI part. So let's go back there. And let's create another function called sign in user. Call the task, Firebase Manager, and sign in user. So I'm gonna call email and password. Okay, I think we have everything we need right now. Okay, we forgot to add right here, sign in user. Okay, so now we can actually sign in the user. Let's start the app. Okay, remember the credential that you signed up with. So I believe it's a test@test.com. So for the password, just make sure you enter the same correct password. And click on sign in, and here you can see we're successfully signing successfully. Here's your ID, and that's the same ID that's on the Firebase console. Okay, awesome. So now let's integrate social media signing, and specifically Google signing. First, we will need to configure Firebase to allow Google signing. So let's stop this right here and head back to the Firebase console first. Okay, now you can just click on this add new provider, and you'll be able to choose additional providers, which you can see there's a lot of options here. You can integrate the authentication with Facebook, Apple, Twitter, anything. But in our case here, we're just gonna use Google, since that's one of the common social network logging, social media logging, or third-party logging. Let's do that and enable it. So now actually the Google sign-in is automatically configured on your connected Apple and the web apps. To set up Google sign-in in your Android apps, you need to add a shared fingerprint for each app on your project settings. So update the project level setting below. So project public facing name. For now, it's gonna keep whatever this default is. Project support email. We're just gonna use my personal email for that. Then safe list client ID from external project. You can ignore all that pretty much. Click save. Okay, now the Google login has been enabled. So in order to integrate with this, we can go back to our Firebase documentation and looking for Google. And then you can just follow the step right here. Basically, the first thing is actually you have to integrating with the library, which I already done that. Another one is add a Google Sign-in SDK to your project. Basically, you want to, when prompt, you want to add this Google Sign-in. So copy this. And let's go back to our project to add this library. Then next, after that is enable Google Sign-in for Firebase project, which we already did that. Enabled that. Okay, so after that, after we add library, we'll come back for the coding part. All right, so we're back here. So let's just go to here, go to our project and adding the new Google Sign-in SDK. And we're going to choose connect to minor and with to our target. So let's add the package. All right, so there's two options here. Since we're going to use in SwiftUI, we're going to just choose the sign-in Swift version of it. So let's add that package. Okay, now go back to our SwiftUI, and now we can go back to the Firebase documentation and take a look what we have to do while this package downloads. Okay, so next is import the required header files. So first you must import the Firebase SDK and the Google Sign-in SDK header files into your app. So basically we need Firebase Core, Firebase Auth, and Google Sign-in, okay? So implementing Google Sign-in, basically we need to use the schema URL to have a callback to the application. So that's the behavior where you see most app have. Actually, when you tap on the Google Sign-in, it will pop up another window inside the app that take you to a Google Sign-in page where you sign in, then it will bring you back to this current application. So we're gonna follow the step here then to integrating that feature. So implement Google Sign-in by following these steps. See the Google Sign-in developer documentation for details on using Google Sign-in with iOS. Add custom URL scheme to your Xcode project. So open your Xcode project configuration. Click the project name in the left tree view. Select your app from the target section. Then select the info tab and expand the URL type section. Click the plus button and add a URL scheme for your reversed client ID. To find this value, open the Google Service info the plist configuration file and look for reverse client ID key. Copy the value of that key and paste it into URL scheme box on the configuration page. Leave the other fields untouched. When the complete, your config should look something similar to the following. Okay, it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Let's go ahead and do that first, then we'll come back to the documentation. Okay, so let's go to the project setting here, go to the target, go to the info tab, and you can see URL type right here. So we need to copy the Google Service Info's the reversed client ID key. So double click on that and make a copy. Go back to this and add one URL scheme. Want to add right there. Let's go back, double check, make sure we have everything correct. I don't believe we need to touch anything else except adding that there. So let's go to the documentation. Okay, looks we actually added correctly there. So let's continue. So in our app delegate, we need to start the Firebase as usual. Then now we need to have this open URL and returning this. So let's just simply copy this code right here and go back to our project. Okay, so we're back here. Go to the learn Firebase in SwiftUI app or whatever that you are using. So just paste that function you copy right here. We're gonna make an indentation a little bit better. You can use Control-I to make indentation better for the highlighted code. We also need Google Sign-in, so we need to import the Google Sign-in. Okay. Let's go back to the documentation, see what else we need to do. Okay, next is we need to pass the presenting view controller and the client ID for your app to sign in. and method of the Google sign-in provider and create a Firebase authentication credential from the resulting Google Auth token. Basically, we need to create the client ID from Firebase and then pass the client ID to the Google sign-in configuration and cause the Google sign-in to sign you in. Okay, that looks pretty straightforward there. We need to pass the presenting view controller. So basically, we need a view controller to presenting whatever this is, and the client ID for your app to sign in method. I don't believe we need a actual view controller from UIKit. So we're gonna try to integrate the SwiftUI, Swift part of code, and to try see if it will automatically already have a view existed. If not, we will use UI representable to actually shows a UI view controller from the UIKit. So let's copy this code here and go back to our view model, the Firebase manager. Let's go. So right here, I want to create another function called sign with Google. I'll paste all the code in there, and we want to importing Google sign-in. We do also need import Firebase core. Okay. And sign-in was presenting. Okay, so we do actually need a view controller in this case. So let's go create a UI representable view so that it can actually shows the UI view controller. Then use the UI view controller to actually presenting this part of the code over there. Okay, so first let's create another Google sign-in view. And then we want to do a struct and Google sign-in view. I want to call UI representable. I believe we do need to import UIKit on this. UI view controller representable. I do believe this has some kind of protocol we will need to implement. Oh, this is a UI SwiftUI. Okay, I thought it was UIKit. Okay, and we need to implement the stubs. So I do believe we need to call like a make UI. Yes, make a UI view controller. We want to create a simple UI view controller. I actually don't need this. It's just gonna be pretty straightforward to it. I'm not gonna have anything special. I'm not gonna passing anything. Let me see. Yeah, we also need update as well. Default. For what actually you need to implement, you can always go in there, take a look what's required. It's gonna be calling make and update, and also dismantle. If you want, you can also call that as well. Okay, I think that's all we need for now. Let's create a additional UI view controller to handle that part. So we're gonna call this SwiftUI and sign in, Google sign in view controller. It's gonna be a class of called Google sign in view controller, and it's a UI view controller. It's gonna be UIKit. And then we want to have a view did load, super view did load, and all that. So we want to sign in when this starts. So let's go back to Firebase Manager and copy this code right there. And then we can remove this Google sign in here and the Firebase core since we don't need that no more. And we want to import right here, Firebase core, and import Google sign in. And we have sign in with Google right here. And here we can just call sign in with Google. And then we can go back to this view here. Okay, so for this one, I believe we just need to create a view controller right here, then returns that back. I don't believe we need to make update anything, so let's call it update view controller. So let's just I also believe we probably still need the tab alias for this. What we created is called Google sign in view controller. So I do believe we need to do this as well. Google sign in view controller, then let Google sign in VC equal to Google sign in view controller, and returns the Google sign in VC. And I believe that's all we need right here. Does not conform to. Do we miss anything? Right. Okay. So let's just. I think this is okay. That's a little bit different. Okay. Let's replace this. So then we can just erase this and use what it gives us. Okay, the next thing we want to solve is right here. Why it says cannot find the Google Auth provider. Believe that's supposed to be inside the Google sign in. Google Auth provider. Let's go to the target, do a quick look on the general, see if we imported Google Auth, Firebase Auth maybe. Import Firebase Auth. Okay, that's right. We need Firebase Auth as well. Okay, now we will have a guard lag to check if the error. We can actually erase that. Just use if let. We're just gonna copy whatever that was. We had it in the Firebase manager, then we should be able to use that. So comment here. Be user the ID token string, you can use that, or I do believe you can just use if let result. I do believe the result also contains that as well. Result user UID, user ID. Okay, I think that we are good. Or we can call the same thing, ID token string. So in that way, sign up successfully with Google. Then we can remove this part of code here. You can create a credential here, then have access token to use the Google Auth provider credential. But before we continue, let's go to the documentation, see what we need to do next. We should be good there. Cannot construct because it has no accessible initializer. We can technically give a default init. And I believe we might need class has no initializer. I believe that's because due to this right here. We can give a default one because we still need a pass in. So okay, I think that should resolve the warning, and same as here. Right, okay. So now we can actually go back to our content. Instead of call social login, we're just gonna call Google login right here. Okay. All right, let's try to run the app and see what happens. And I believe we need a weak self, since we have that part of code there. So should be good now. Let's run again. Okay, we have the Google login. Click on it. Okay, so attempt to load a view of a view controller while it is deallocating it is not allowed and resulting in undefined behavior. I do believe it because we're trying to presenting that and they're trying to load something before we can do stuff to before you can do anything to it. So let's make some adjustment to this code here. So technically, we can actually create our own buttons right here. Let's just create something called right, let's still create a really simple button right here, so we can actually have something to tap on to trigger that code, so that way the UI can wait until finish loading. So let's do a UI button here. We can just say a type. Let's call it system button. So we don't need something really complicated. We just want a really simple one. So button.set title. I'm gonna call it a Google login. For state, it's gonna be normal. And we're just gonna give a really simple at target. Gonna be self selector. We're just gonna make this a selector then. So is it gonna be selector? Then we're gonna be signing with Google. Then gonna be touch up inside. Okay. And I believe we need to also view add sub view at the button, and I believe that will show up properly right there. Let's double check why this is that's not referred to an object method property or initializer. I do have a add object in front of it, so it should be accepting it properly. Let me do a quick view, see what happens. Okay, I don't believe I needed the parenthesis there. Right, okay. So let's run again. I believe there's supposed to be a button right here. Let me do a double check, see why it's not showing up. Let's do a little quick view hierarchy view, see if that button actually showed up in the screen. Okay, the button has not been showed up. We have the Google Sign View controller already added. We do have the UI representable showing all that. So I want to see why this has not been added up. Okay, let's pause this right now, stop that right now. So I think I know why. I think we need to add a frame to it. CG rec. We just add one. Let's see 0, 0, and we're just gonna give a width of 300 and a height of 100, and then we're gonna be center it. Center equal to view dot center. So I think that should show up something right there. Yes, we have the button right there. Click on button, then we now have this pop-up to ask you want to sign in with Google. Yes. And then for this sample test here, I'm just gonna use my personal account. So I'm gonna hide this part that I'll show you guys once I finish signing up. Okay, so once I sign up, basically I just need to follow the step like all other Google signing application. Then I'm just gonna open up my, I believe, send notification and open the Gmail. Okay, open the Gmail app. And I got a notification here trying to sign in. Yes, that is me. And then I sign in and I go back to this page right here. Now you can see that signing successfully with Google. Here's your ID, and here's the ID here. Then ID token string, basically. Then here is signing successfully through Google login. Here's your ID, and that's my ID for the Google signing. Okay, so now there's to come with another problem is once we successfully sign in, we want to actually remove this view here. So let's add that code real quick. So that we can actually remove that view. But in order to do that, we need some help with, we need to know when that process has been finished. So let's go back to Firebase Manager, sign in user with credential. Let's go to here and let's pause that right now. So when this is finished, we want to know if you are successfully signing or not. For our demonstration purpose, we're not going to returning any error. We're just going to create a completion block. And then we're just going to return a Boolean, tell us if you are succeed or you're failed. So if you fail, we're just going to print out the error locally, then we're going to return it. We're going to return a Boolean, say false. And if you succeed, we're going to return a true. Same thing as if unknown error happened, return false. And then for that, we can go back to our view controller. And then we can finish this part up with a completion block. So if success, we want to basically dismiss the view. So dismiss true. And for that, we also need another thing here, just in case we're on different thread. So I want to use dispatch queue .min.async. So make sure this UI changes is happening on the main thread. So anything fails, we're just gonna let it silently fail. We're not gonna do anything there. So let's try that again. Want to sign in with Google? Click the button, and I already logged in once, so I'm gonna log in again. And that view disappeared, and we got our tokens back. All right, so let's go back to the Firebase console, take a look at what we got, and you should be able to see your user logged in with Google and and their ID as well. Okay, we're inside the Firebase console. Let's go to the user, and as you can see, I already logged in with Google, and my user ID is right there. And there you have it, that we have successfully implemented email registration, email sign-in, and a social media sign-in functionality in our SwiftUI app using Firebase authentication. And that's a wrap for this video, and we have successfully integrated Firebase authentication with email and social media in SwiftUI. But before we finish, I want to remind you about the surprise giveaway. Again, we have planned at the end of this series, so make sure to follow my social handles to stay updated and participate. If you found this video helpful, please give a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel. By doing so, you will be supporting us and helping us create more valuable content for you. In our next video, and we will explore the Firebase Firestore and learn how to retrieve data from it. So stay tuned for subscribing and enabling notifications. And thank you for watching today's video. And remember to follow my social handles for giveaway announcements, like and subscribe to my channel.
and I will see you in the next video.